Okay, so let's dive into this story. Um, it's as captivating as it is unsettling. You know, imagine a world where just a Facebook post could get you killed.
Wow.
That's the reality we're going to explore today.
Yeah.
Um, with Room Number 2011, this short film that's based on a true story,
Right.
the story of Abrar Fahad,
Yeah.
a Bangladeshi student who was tragically murdered for things he was saying online.
This film really grabbed my attention because of how it was made. It wasn't some big studio production or anything. It was the work of this drama student at Jahangirnagar University.
Really?
Yeah, his name is Jason, and he put this whole thing together with a crew of student volunteers.
Wow.
And they even managed to secure funding from a U.S. social enterprise, one that kind of blends Dr. Eunice's social business model with like a Y Combinator approach,
Yeah.
using business ideas to tackle social issues.
Oh, wow, that's really interesting. So before we unpack the film itself, let's give our listener a little background.
Hmm.
Who was Abrar Fahad, and why does his story resonate so much?
Abrar was a student at BUET. It's like one of the top engineering universities in Bangladesh.
Okay.
And what the film does so well is it shows this really stark contrast in Abrar's personality.
Okay.
He's a devout guy. He enjoys simple things like his mother's cooking dreams of, building a farm with his brother.
Right.
But then online, he's very outspoken, especially when it comes to social injustices and, India's influence on Bangladesh.
So that tension between his more gentle nature and his bold online persona, that really kind of sets the stage for the drama that unfolds, right?
Yeah, definitely. It makes you think about how those two sides of him clashed with the world he was living in.
Exactly. And that's where I think Room 2011, this room in the film, comes in. It's depicted as this central hub for a student political group, and it immediately gives you this sense of unease.
Yeah, it shows that dark side of student politics. You get this feeling of dread surrounding the room. It's a place where like casual cruelty and hazing and even violence are used to keep everyone in line.
So it's almost like witnessing something wrong in this environment could be dangerous for you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's this constant pressure cooker of fear.
And that's the world that Abrar is suddenly thrust into.
Yeah.
It starts with what seems like a harmless summons to Room 2011,
Right.
and then it quickly spirals into this intense interrogation.
Right. Accusations of terrorism, anti-government sentiments, all stemming from Abrar's Facebook posts.
And here's where the film gets really tough to watch, but also incredibly compelling. It doesn't shy away from showing how quickly things escalate.
Yeah.
It goes from verbal abuse to physical torture. We see Abrar pleading for his life. He even gets this brief, heartbreaking phone call with his mother.
Oh, yeah.
And it's in that call that you really see his innocence, his love for his family just shining through.
It's a pivotal scene because it reminds us that he wasn't just some political target. He was a real person, somebody's son, somebody's brother,
Yeah.
full of life and potential.
It's truly heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm.
And despite his pleas, the violence continues, ultimately leading to his death. And then to add insult to injury, we see the perpetrators trying to cover up their crime.
Right.
This complete disregard for human life and justice is just chilling.
Yeah, and it makes it clear that this isn't just about this one event. It speaks to a much larger pattern of behavior.
Exactly. And what I found striking is how the film portrays those involved.
Yeah.
They're not presented as these shadowy figures, but as students like Abrar who are caught up in this toxic system where loyalty seems to outweigh basic human decency.
It really makes you wonder what pushes young people to this point. What turns student politics into this breeding ground for such brutality?
Right. It's a question that stays with you long after the film ends.
Yeah.
It makes you think about our own responsibility to speak out against injustice, especially when it's happening right in front of us.
Right.
We can't just be bystanders.
Exactly. And that question of what leads to this kind of brutality, it's not simple.
Yeah.
It has deep roots in Bangladesh's history.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. Give us some historical context here.
Yeah.
What is it about student activism in Bangladesh that makes it so potent, but also often so dangerous?
Well, you have to go back to like the language movement in 1952.
Okay.
The fight for Bengali to be recognized as an official language, or
Yeah.
even the Liberation War in 71, where students were really at the forefront of the movement for Bangladesh's independence.
Yeah.
These events, they cemented student activism as a powerful force in the country.
So it's not just about like campus politics or student elections.
No.
It's about national identity and shaping the very future of Bangladesh.
Exactly. But that legacy also makes student groups a target.
Right.
Those in power, they see them as potential threats, especially when they challenge the status quo.
And Room Number 2011 really shows how that power dynamic can play out,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
We see those in charge using violence not just as punishment, but as a way to control the narrative and silence dissent.
Right. And it's not just physical violence either. It's psychological too. And the film uses this motif of the Eilish fish to highlight that.
Wait, hold on. The Eilish fish.
Yeah.
Now, I'm guessing this isn't just about someone's dinner.
No. The Eilish in Bangladesh, it's more than just a fish.
Okay.
It's like a symbol of national pride, cultural heritage, even economic prosperity.
Ah, okay. So when we see Abrar enjoying his mother's Eilish dish early in the film,
Right?
it's not just a meal, it's this deep connection to his roots,
Yeah.
to everything that makes him Bangladeshi.
Exactly. And when that simple pleasure is taken away, it becomes this powerful symbol of how he's stripped of his identity, his
Yeah.
rights, his very humanity.
It's a reminder that political oppression often targets the things that make us human,
Yeah,
the things that bring us joy and connect us to our culture.
absolutely.
Now let's talk a little bit about the film itself and the way it was made.
Okay.
We mentioned earlier this unusual funding model. Can you tell us more about that Y Combinator twist and why it matters in this context?
It's such an interesting aspect, right? Because Y Combinator is known for funding tech startups,
Yeah.
not social issue films. So how did a film like Room Number 2011 end up on their radar?
Right. What's the connection there?
Well, the organization that actually funded the film, they were inspired by Dr. Eunice's social business concept.
Mhm.
The idea is you use business principles to solve social problems.
Right.
And they saw potential in Ji-sun's vision, not just as a powerful story, but as a way to, spark conversation and hopefully drive some change.
So it's like using a very modern approach, a kind of social entrepreneurship to tackle a deeply rooted issue.
Exactly. And I think that's a sign of progress in itself.
Yeah.
It shows how young people are finding these creative ways to address social issues using whatever tools and resources they have.
Yeah, and it's worth remembering that this film wasn't made by seasoned professionals.
Right.
It was created and acted in by students from Jahangirnagar University.
Right. A bunch of volunteers driven by this passion to tell this story.
Exactly. And I think that rawness really adds to the film's power. It feels so authentic and urgent, like a cry from the heart. So we've talked about the historical context, the symbolism of the Eilish,
Yeah.
the unusual funding, the passionate team behind the film. But what about its impact? Has it sparked conversations in Bangladesh?
It definitely has. It's generated a lot of discussion and debate.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of things are people saying?
Some people have praised the film for its bravery in tackling this very sensitive issue,
Right.
but it's also faced some criticism.
Oh, criticism from who? What are they saying?
Well, some accuse it of being biased against the ruling party, while others say it doesn't go far enough in condemning the violence inherent in student politics.
So even within Bangladesh, there are very different opinions
Yeah.
about how this story should be told, what message it should convey.
Absolutely. And that's actually, I think, a sign of a healthy democracy.
Right.
The film has opened up this space for dialogue, for people to grapple with these difficult questions about power and accountability and the responsibility we all have to create a just society.
And that takes us beyond Bangladesh, right?
Yeah.
This film isn't just about one country or one incident.
Yeah.
It speaks to this global concern about freedom of expression.
Right.
So what does Room Number 2011 contribute to that broader conversation?
Abrar's story, it's a stark reminder that freedom of expression is something that can be very fragile,
Yeah.
something that needs to be defended constantly, not taken for granted.
It's easy to think that censorship and violence against those who speak out only happens in, authoritarian regimes.
Right.
But this film shows it can happen anywhere, even in places that claim to value free speech.
Absolutely. And the tactics are often the same.
Yeah.
Labeling dissent as anti-national, using fear and intimidation to silence critics, creating a climate where people are afraid to speak their minds.
And it's chilling how the film shows how social media can be used for this very purpose.
Right.
On the one hand, it gives people a platform to express themselves.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, it creates this permanent record that can be used against them.
It's a double-edged sword for sure. And it raises a lot of questions about how we protect free speech online.
Right.
How do we make sure that social media platforms aren't being used as tools of repression?
So it's not just about the content we post.
No.
It's about the systems that control that content, the algorithms that decide what we see and who gets silenced.
Exactly. And this is where the role of art becomes really crucial. I think
Right.
films like Room Number 2011 can help us see these issues more clearly. They can move us emotionally, make us think critically, and inspire us to act.
Art can be a powerful weapon against injustice,
It can.
a way to shine a light on the darkest corners and demand accountability.
Right, and in a world where information is constantly being manipulated
Yeah.
and truth is hard to find,
Right.
art can be like a beacon, a reminder of our shared humanity and the values we hold dear.
It's like that saying, art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable.
Yeah.
Room number 2011 definitely does both.
It does, and that's why it's so important to support artists who are willing to take risks, to tell these difficult stories, and to challenge the status quo.
Yeah, because ultimately it's through those stories, those acts of courage that we can start to imagine and create a better world.
And that idea of imagining a better world, it really ties into the film's call to action, right?
Yeah.
Demand a terror-free education system for Bangladesh.
Right. It's a demand that goes beyond just physical safety.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
about creating a system where students can think freely, question authority, express themselves without fear of, being punished.
So it's not just about preventing violence. It's about fostering a culture of critical thinking and open dialogue.
Exactly. The very things that Abra was punished for.
So what would that look like in practice? I mean, what steps could actually be taken to create this terror-free environment?
Well, I think it starts with addressing the root causes of the violence within student politics. Tackling issues like political polarization, the influence of outside forces, and this culture of impunity that allows these acts to go unpunished.
So it's about holding those in power accountable,
Yeah.
whether they're student leaders or those manipulating things behind the scenes.
Right. But it also requires a shift in mindset, recognizing that diversity of thought is a strength, not a threat.
And creating spaces where students from different backgrounds with different opinions can engage in respectful debate.
Right. Where dissent is seen as an opportunity for growth, not a reason for punishment.
It's about fostering a sense of community,
Yeah.
where students feel supported and empowered to speak their minds, knowing that their voices will be heard and respected.
Absolutely.
And that responsibility, it goes beyond just the classroom, doesn't it?
Oh, it does.
It's about building a society that values those same principles.
Absolutely. The fight for a terror-free education system is ultimately a fight for a more just and equitable society.
Right, one where everyone feels safe and empowered to participate in the democratic process.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the power of Room Number 2011. I mean, this isn't just a film.
Yeah.
It's a catalyst for change.
It is.
It sparked these important conversations, mobilized activists, brought international attention to a critical issue.
And it's shown the world that even a small group of passionate individuals with a powerful story and a creative vision can make a real difference.
Yeah. And it's given hope to those who are fighting for justice, reminding them that they're not alone.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to really think about? What's the lasting message of Room Number 2011?
Abrar's story, it's the tragedy, for sure. It reminds us how fragile freedom is and the terrible cost of intolerance.
Yeah.
But it's also a call to action. A challenge to each of us to speak up against injustice, to defend the rights of others, and to never stop fighting for a world where tragedies like this don't happen anymore. Well said. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this journey. We hope this deep dive has been insightful and thought-provoking, and maybe even inspiring. Remember, even in the face of darkness, there's always hope, and every voice raised against injustice, every act of courage, every effort to create a more just and equitable world, it brings us one step closer to the light.